On behalf of INS and on my own behalf, I welcome all of you to this ninth webinar series talk. This webinar committee is constantly striving to engage eminent speakers to give talk on subjects of interest to INS community. We are also engaged in reaching out to general public under outreach program. It is very important for DAE. And it gives me a great pleasure to welcome Dr. C.P. Kaushik, Director NRG, BRC, who is going to speak on the India's backend science and technology. It had been a long desire of all the INS members to have a talk on backend cycle. So that desire we are fulfilling today. So for this, I had approached Dr. Kaushik, who readily agreed to my request and provided us all the inputs. As we all know, backend cycle has a great significance to our preface program, as well as on the social welfare to mankind. Many spin-offs have come to light, and many are in the pipeline. It may not be an exaggeration to say that the success of the second phase in terms of economical source of energy and power depends on the back-end fuel cycle. We in DAE are aware of this very well. The energy security of future largely depends on nuclear and renewable energy. I'm sure experts in energy would have considered all this with all these factors when they plan the cycle system as a whole. So with these comments, I now request our President, Dr. S.K. Mehta, to give his opening remarks.
Hello.
Yeah, we are able to hear you, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, very good. So good evening, everybody. To the INS members, some of the invitees and other friends. We are really very happy to have this webinar on a very important subject, which is the advancement in the backend cycle of the nuclear fuel cycle. I have been always wondering why it is called backend. Because this is where our program is dependent upon. It's really a rebirth cycle where the energy for the next few cycles comes from us. So from that point of view, it is an important and essential activity and a comprehensive development in a way that convinces the public and the professionals is a great help to us. So I am really thankful to Dr. Kaushik for being sparing time and trying to give this lecture and trying to bring out the various aspects, the technical aspects of the whole thing that will help the INS members to convince their colleagues, friends, and the general public about the importance of the nuclear energy. While I'm on the line, I'm talking to the INS members. I wish to also thank them for their cooperation and valuable help in our functioning of the INS through the Executive Committee. Executive Committee has been bringing out all the quarterly newspaper and all the accounts and balance sheets and this webinar and some other activities like competition in the various aspects are from there. So I think this activity can be sustained only by the cooperation of all the members. But at the same time, I like to request the members to please make your valuable suggestion to us so that how we can go ahead in meeting our objective in the proper function. And I really would be extremely happy if the more members send their suggestions and you're willing to participate in the program they suggested from there. With this, I also again welcome Dr. Kaushik for this important seminar, and I'm looking forward to the technical content of the meeting there. Thank you very much. Yes.
Go to that. Okay. Thank you, sir, for those introductory words, the opening remarks. It's now my pleasure to introduce the speaker to the gathering. It will be a brief introduction because I don't want to take away the time available to Mr. Kaushik. There's much more to it, to his contributions than what is being read out today. So I begin. Dr. Chetan Prakash Kaushik, outstanding scientist, BARC and senior professor HBNI, is presently holding the responsibility of Director of Nuclear Recycle Group, BARC. He underwent the one-year training course in nuclear science and technology at BARC in the year 1984 after completing post-graduation and MPhil in chemistry, and joined the waste management division of BARC on graduating from the BARC training school. He was awarded the PhD degree from Mumbai University for his work on glass chemistry for nuclear waste management, which has actually served the department in an enormous manner, and it's really a noteworthy contribution. As Director of Nuclear Recycle Group, BARC, Dr. Kaushik is responsible currently for multidisciplinary program for R&D in the field of back-end of nuclear fuel cycle. He is also responsible for operation of various back-end fuel cycle facilities at BARC Trombay. He has played a pivotal role in development, demonstration, and deployment of innovative technologies for separation of radioactive components from waste for societal benefits, converting radioactive waste to wealth in a manner of speaking. Dr. Kaushik is a member of international committees such as the Waste Safety Standard Committee, as well as consultant of Technical Working Group for Nuclear Fuel Cycle Options of IAEA, among other committees of high standing. He has shared his knowledge by delivering numerous lectures in his field of expertise at national and international forums in Austria, Singapore, France, China, and other countries. He has been conferred several awards, such as the prestigious Homi Bhabha Science and Technology Award, the Indian Nuclear Society Gold Medal Award, as well as a number of group achievement awards from DAE. He is also associated with Homi Bhabha National Institute, deemed to be university, as a senior professor. 5 students have successfully completed their PhD under his guidance, and 4 more students are currently pursuing their doctorate degrees. He has more than 200 publications to his credit, and as just now mentioned, among them a recent contribution to the INS newsletter as well. And more than 100 of these publications have appeared in peer-reviewed international journals. So with this, I end my brief introduction. It's now my pleasure and privilege to invite Mr. Kaushik to commence the presentation. Over to you, Kaushik.
Namaskar. Indeed, it is a privilege for me to be in front of all of you to share the work on our back end of nuclear fuel cycle. Without losing any more time, let me straight away go ahead with the presentation part. So I hope the presentation is visible to all.
Yes, yes.
So the topic is advancement in back end of nuclear fuel cycle, Indian perspective. Before I start, I really acknowledge the work, all the mentors who have taught me, and whatever work which I will be presenting. Indeed, it is a collective efforts of a team of dedicated professionals, including scientists, engineers of BRC and different groups. So it is really a pleasure for me to dedicate today's presentation to all my mentors. Many of them are maybe are present to listen to me, but this particular talk is dedicated to all the mentors with a very humble and folded hand efforts and requests. So these are some of the points which I will be covering during coming 60 minutes or so. Maybe a couple of slides I will be just showing for having a continuity with respect to electricity demands and options, and then straight away come to nuclear energy, fuel cycle options, and maybe a couple of slides on closed fuel cycles, and then straight away I will come to back-end parts of our nuclear fuel cycle. It has been very well said. In fact, it is called back-end, but it has been the backbone of our nuclear technology advancement in the country. And then maybe a couple of slides I'll be showing with respect to what advancement we have done during recycling as well as in the field of high-level waste management. And then I'll be sharing some of the slides on offshoot applications. What are the other areas where these applications have been used fruitfully. And then just to share some of the slides, how we are being viewed internationally on this particular area. And then, of course, I will have a recap of main points, what I will be going ahead with the present slides. Now, if you look at the per capita consumption of electricity, the particular upper one shows the USA and then Europe and then maybe Japan and then India. In India, particularly part now, if I look at the data of 2020, per capita consumption of electricity is coming around 1208 our units. And if you look at the Canada and all, they are almost at 15,520, and maybe a modest figure of something around 10,000, maybe there of the Australia. And so it looks that we are far behind with respect to the per capita consumption. And the data which I have again taken out from our literatures, they do indicate that now also even 13% of the world population have not yet seen the benefits of electricity. And among that, even in India also, we have still 15% of populations. Still, we have to work hard to get the benefits of electricity to reach to them. That means still there is a great difference between the supply and the demand. Maybe just an interesting slide. See, in 2018, coal contribution has been 61%, and now the data which I have collected shows that it has reduced to 53.6. That means that carbon footprints efforts by Government of India and all the family add together, if I take India as one family, then efforts have been now seriously put to reduce the carbon footprints by having choosing an option. And you will see our solar and all, they have comparatively increased. Like your renewable, if you see 2018, it was around 13%, and the most there has been a steep rise up to about 26.1%. And accordingly, although there has been no decline as far as your current installed capacity is concerned, but percentage wise, yes, there has been a marginal reduction because others like your solar and all increased. So comparatively, you find from 2 to 1.7%, but nevertheless, current installed capacity has been the same, rather it has been a little more than earlier what we had. Now, again, this slide also indicates the urgent need of electricity, although all of us are aware, but still, I thought, let me just show that if we aim at around 9% of our growth of GDP, maybe somewhere a decade earlier, to say now we are in 2021, and if you look at 2031 or 2032, somewhere we'll be needing and total electricity come of around 800 plus gigawatt electric. And if you look at the renewable part, to the best of our understanding, we may reach to around 250 or so, although a lot of efforts are being put but I know all my mentors and all the listeners are aware that still in renewable, we had to work with respect to storage, with respect to transmission. I'm talking about solar part. With the best efforts, and the present speculation indicates that in a decade, we may not have a miracle, but nevertheless, there will be a steady increase and come where something around 250 or 300 megawatt electric from renewable. So from where the gap of 800 to 300, from where it will come? And if we look, if the gap has to be met by thermal, then it is equivalent to pumping of around 3 to 4 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. That means huge amount of carbon dioxide will be getting pumped, and all of us are aware about the repercussions of carbon dioxide coming into the atmosphere, resulting into what is called global warming or increasing the temperature of Mother Earth. This particular slides again takes about the different options available to us, which includes our solar, then wind, and then nuclear, and of course the thermal. And as on date also, we are heavily banking on thermal parts at the cost of having huge amount of CO2 getting pumped into the atmosphere. Now, the global warming, it has not been a concept, rather it is now reality. We have now started seeing the signature in reality. If you look at the first graph and the steep rise in slope in last like some 30 to 40 years, although the value, the magnitude of value may be around a less than a degree Celsius, but that makes a very clear message that during our industrial revolution in the last 50 years, we are paying the price of increase in temperature, and that is primarily because we have been mainly banking on thermal power based, having more amount of CO2 getting pumped into the atmosphere, which eventually results in increasing, melting the ice, and then water level of seas will go up, and that will result with respect to the coastal area sites and all will have a serious part. Now, this has been known a long back as well, nothing new in it, but nevertheless, now we have started seeing the real part of it. And the seriousness has gone internationally as well. I am very sure my worthy members must be knowing that this year, Physics Nobel Prize has again been bestowed to or conferred to the gentlemen who have been very closely associated with the global change work, particularly with respect to modeling and all. And the right-hand part indicates that if you talk about sea, you talk about atmosphere, you talk about glaciers, and you talk about green part, they have been very closely interconnected, and deviation in one has serious repercussions in other as well. Now, recently, I am very sure all of us are aware that COP26 has been there in UK, in Glasgow, and there our Honorable Prime Minister of the country has made a very ambitious and good statement that we aim to have 2070. By that time, we will work all the way, all out approach, the best efforts to get net zero carbon emissions. And American Nuclear Society also made a very, we can say, strong emphasis that we urge delegates to recognize the inherent advantage of emphasizing nuclear technology for industrial process heat, hydrogen production, and desalination. To achieve decarbonation as rapidly, as efficiently as possible, governments and policymakers must implement technology neutral, performance-based climate and energy policies that treat all carbon-free energy sources fairly and equally. Nuclear must be treated on a level playing field with other clean energy technologies. This just I have taken from that, again, literature and put as it is. So this is straight away coming from what I have noted from our American Nuclear Society's members. Similarly, our Director General IAEA also has strongly emphasized that nuclear energy is prominent alternative to tackle climate change by minimizing carbon footprints. So now if again look at the wind, our solar, and look at their capacity factors, all of us, we agree that nuclear has distinctly an upper edge, although a lot of efforts are being put in solar to enhance the capacity, and to the challenging areas are to go for work for storage. A lot of work is going on storage as well as transmission part. Still, I feel it has to take time to come to it where we can have an important level of capacity, more than 90% or so. As on date, we have a nuclear technology which provides a capacity factor better than 90%. Just to appreciate this particular slide, just for the sake of comparison, again, this I have taken from some of the literatures. The nuclear plant, like if you have a 2 rubber reactors, and for the capacity of same 16.1 terawatt thermal from nuclear and same from wind, you have to have a wind turbines of order of 6,200, installed capacity only 1.99 because capacity factor is 90% or so. Here in wind you have to go more, and the covered area is around only 1.6 kilometers. On the other hand, wind and all will take a more. All of us are aware that there is a distinct advantage for going for nuclear part. And now, apart from one of the energy productions, let me tell you that although all my worthy members know about it, that we split atoms for the progress and prosperity of the nation. That means apart from nuclear energy, the nuclear technology is touching our human society at different spheres in case of health, food, water, environment, national security, technology, and industry. So, and the way our Manchanda sir, Vice President of our in INS, has been talking about, there has been recently a book published on the Founder Day, talks about non-power applications of nuclear technology. There we had 2 chapters. I had authored 2 chapters there. One is wealth as a waste, and another is nuclear batteries. So what I'm trying to tell, that there are enormous non-power applications as well of nuclear technology. Coming back to the 3-stage program, as far as our by our founder of our nuclear energy program in the country, Dr. Homi Jahangir Bhabha, and the aim is very clear that we wanted to have a optimal utilization of resources, whatever we have with us. And so we started with stage 1, that okay, let's go ahead with natural uranium-based PWR reactors and go for a closed fuel cycle so that we can extract the another fissile material, plutonium-239, which can serve as a fuel for second stage. There is our fast research reactor programs. And here also, thorium being abundant in as far as our country is concerned, as a fertile material, we can use as a blanket part, and then again go for reprocessing to get 233 from here, which becomes a stage 3 based self-reliant fuel. And as on date also, we feel that whatever has been envisaged, it was indeed a far-sighted vision of Dr. Bhabha, which stands as in today also equally important. If we have to run on our own feet, it becomes very important to become self-reliant on the fuel parts. So 3-stage nuclear program ascertains optimal utilization of uranium and thorium resources in the country. And just for the sake of continuity of the PowerPoint, our today's lecture, I thought let me just introduce that both type of fuel cycles being practiced internationally, and we really respect the policies adopted by each member state. In the open fuel cycle, straight away the spent fuel is taken as a waste, and in our country, because we told that we are going ahead with respect to our optimal utilization of resources, we have gone for a closed fuel cycle. Eventually, it results into a reduction in the toxicity of the waste, and then have reduction in dramatic way with respect to the waste, which eventually need to go to geological disposal facility at some point of time in comparison to once through fuel cycle. So although we respect the policies being adopted by internationally member states, but India, we we advocate the closed fuel cycle because of the fuel, our utilization of our resources. At the same time, it reduces the toxicity and reduces the volume dramatically, which will go for geological disposal facility. These are some of the countries. On the left-hand side, we have taken for open fuel cycles, and countries like USA has been rather watchful in both. They have been working in both and still watchful for both going. And India very strongly advocates a closed fuel cycle for our future nuclear technology program. And we have now decades of experience. Maybe if you look at 1956 onwards, now we have 4 to 5 decades of experience in operating closed fuel cycle at different, covering all stages of nuclear fuel cycle, rather including right from mining to as good as your reactor operations and reprocessing and then waste management together. So again, something similar, that take the fresh fuel, put into the reactor, spent fuel comes out, and we go for a reprocessing as a part of closed fuel cycle options, closed fuel cycle approach. And then we recover the uranium, unused uranium, and the fissile material obtained because of the neutron activation of 238 uranium. And that is again being served as a fuel for future reactors. And then we are left with a solution of containing a high amount of radioactivity. We call them a high level waste. If you look at what can be the constituents of high level waste, primarily it will have fission products, again right from mass number, if I remember correctly, from 72 to go to 170, a good series of different half-lives, different concentration, for having different fission yield depending on the burn up, depending on the fuel, depending on the off reactor cooling periods and so on. And we'll have actinides, and then of course, as I told, whatever little amount of uranium which could not be recovered. But mainly it will have fission products and actinides. And among the fission products also, depending on the concentration of the nature of fuel, we know that cesium-137 and strontium-90, if you talk about PSWR reactors having a burn up maybe around 15,000 megawatt day per ton or so, the cesium-137 and strontium-90 together almost constitutes more than 90% of the radioactivity if you take start reprocessing after the maybe 5 years or so, so that the short cooled fission products that decay. So now what the approach has been, high level waste contains these fission products, cesium-137, strontium-90, ruthenium-106. Why to go for straight away management? Why not to exploit those radionuclides for societal benefits? Because the nuclear energy, if we have to go further, it has to be safe, secure. Not only safe, secure, it should be sustainable. At the same time, it has to be made economically viable as well. And the waste management as such, again, we should be able to convince the public at large, look, the waste also is a wealth. Something like in Hindi, we call aam ke aam or gutliyon ke daam. So that way we have to really not only conceptually tell, at the same time, we should be able to demonstrate and practice. So now just to tell that still we are going ahead with an ambitious program which our mentors have foreseen, and now we have under planning around 13 number of reactors, and under operations is around 850 megawatt electrics, and under constructions also. So we have, as on date, we have a ambitious program to go ahead and enhance our contribution with the overall energy production. Following, as on date, we are following the part of what is called energy mix, which includes getting the energy from all the resources, and preferably trying to move toward the option which has got reduced carbon footprints, if not zero. Now coming to the back end part, when we say back end, essentially we are talking about fuel reprocessing or recycling, we can say, and waste management. So the key considerations are conservation of natural resources, and then optimization of waste management processes and disposal conditions. Is it possible to reduce the waste volume to the extent that the volume or the footprints of our disposal system can be reduced considerably? And then we have to make sure that the minimization of environmental impact. And then is it possible to drive to the fuel cycle economics by recovery of the useful radionuclides. To mention a few is 137, strontium 90, tritium 90 to thorium 106, and many of them are there which I have not mentioned intentionally. So this we still, as far as reprocessing is concerned, we bank on the well-known internationally practiced PRX process. And like if you go for the interim fuel storage after cooling, we go for charging, and then we have a decladding and dissolution depending on the chemical decladding or mechanical way of decladding. If it is a mechanical, we get separate hulls out of it. If it is a chemical decladding, the way in case of a research reactor, we are left with what is called alkaline declad waste, and then we adjust or we play with the valency of uranium and plutonium there, and then go for a well-known co-decontamination partition cycle, then followed by purifications of uranium and then plutonium purifications, go for their precipitations, followed the cycle of calcination, and eventually end with the respective oxides for their eventual further use as oxides, as their fuel parts. We have reprocessing plants, and thanks to our mentors that way back almost in 1964, we had the first operating plant, and then we had Pre-Free, and then we have CARP at Kalpakkam. We had now second plants at Tarapur and then at Kalpakkam as well. And we have been working to have advancement and improvement in terms of how to reduce the mangan consumption, how to go for automation so that throughput can be increased. And some of the examples are like your automated spent fuel charging facilities, then chopper mechanisms. We have gone to gang chopper. Like this, we have been evolving and improving. Similarly, for continuous rotary dissolver system instead of batch process, we now are improving to have a continuous systems. Similarly, for calciner also from batch to rotary screw calciner. These are the part of improvements which now we have been working seriously on in the case of recycling of our facilities. And one of the evolved approach has been what is called INRP, that is called integrated facilities. One of the dream which was envisaged by all our mentors, and many of them, really it is a pleasure for me to be there with them, that under the same roof we have that solid in and solid out concept which has been taught to us when we were in our respective training schools. And good to share that now we have come to that stage, although we are in the advanced stage of INRP at Tarapur, and there our utilities are made common so that economics can have favorable conditions. And then we are going for high throughput so that the plant can serve in a safe and automated manner. Having a reduction of our operator dependence can be reduced. Similarly, we have been at DI as a whole, like in Coral, in Kalpakkam, we have now know how to go for a reprocessing of a fast reactor fuel, because all of us are aware that burn-up will be very high, something more than 150,000 megawatt day per ton. Fission product consumption will be very high. And instead of pulse column, we have to go for what is called centrifugal extractor, so that contact time can be reduced, which can even save the degradation of our tributyl phosphate. But even now we are also working on what is is it not possible to work on some other extractants like Doha and all, so that the degraded problems associated with TPB can be reduced. So those things are all at advanced stage of working. We work on what is called development, demonstrate, and then deploy. Those is the mechanism which has been adopted at our level when we have to mature the technology prior to going for its plant scale, of course, after having deliberate regulatory review and clearance. And similarly, probably this we started, even now we have a thorium reprocessing part, like irradiated thorium. Again, we started graduating from, initially we irradiated some of the thorium bundle at our Cyrus reactor, and later on even our other commercial reactors also. And now we can say with proud that India has got the technology on a commercial scale for going for a reprocessing of irradiated thoria. It is a different cup of tea compared to conventional part, and it will have a changes in almost at all stages, like straight away from dissolution also, because thoria being more refractory, it has got challenges, but it has been very successfully operated and shown that now we have in-house technology available on commercial scale with respect to reprocessing of irradiated thorium as well. Just to show that how high level waste is coming, now by future slides, I will be discussing about the management of high level waste, switching from recycling to high level waste. Now, just a simplified slide indicating a flow diagram just to indicate how this HLW is getting generated. From chopped fuel, it goes to dissolver. From dissolver, as I was mentioning, we have to go for the valency adjustment and then go for a pulse column, which will extract uranium and plutonium from there, leaving behind the what is called HNA3 containing fission products, actinides and all, we call as a first cycle raffinate. To reduce the volume, we go for evaporation, and the upper part shows intermediate level of waste, and then the red containing part shows it is a high level waste will be getting generated, which includes almost more than 95 or 97% of the activity generated in entire nuclear fuel cycle, indicating its complete complexity with respect to handling, storage, and management. So if you look at the vision of our founder, Dr. Homi Jahangir Bhabha, right from the day one, right from the conception of nuclear energy program in the country, he has advised to put strong emphasis on the management of radioactive waste getting generated, and he is to indicate that the practices being followed should be so standard so that it can be emulated by others to follow. So one has to, right from the day one, good emphasis has been given with respect to development of the technology which works on waste volume minimization, near zero discharge of radioactivity to the environment to serve as a mool mantra in addition to recycle and reuse. Although the basic facts, basic philosophy rather, we can say some of the radionuclides we are having very small half-life. To give an example of maybe iodine-131 having a half-life of maybe around 8 to 9 days, and there are many more which are in milliseconds and days together. So those things we normally as being followed internationally, delay and decay. And then the bulk of the activity has to be there as a concentrate and contained, and then condition in an inert matrix, and then go for reduce, recycle, and reuse philosophy for having a waste minimized. Again, a similar simplified part, uranium and plutonium is taken out. We have a strontium, we have a cesium and ruthenium. This just I am giving a representative part of fission products. And this shows that all three, in particularly in this, many or more are there, but three are all are having very important applications, provided we have ways and means available to go for a quantitative recovery, achieve that level of purification required, and then put into a form which can be used straight away by our society at large. Maybe in coming slides, I will be putting an attempt to show how this radionuclides in the waste have been recovered by indigenous efforts, the efforts being put by scientific community of our research center, and then recovered and purified in the form which is required, meeting all the regulations, and then now they are serving at different phases of our societal life, maybe as a blood irradiator, maybe as a food grain irradiator, maybe as a therapeutic applications, and recent is ruthenium-106 is being used now as for treatment of eye cancers. Maybe I will be touching upon in coming slides. Coming to the actinides part, many of us, my mentors, are aware this transuranics is appearing at the bottom part of our periodic table, and the one of the special part which makes us concerned, either these transuranics or actinides are themselves long-lived or their decay products are long-lived. So if they are going as it is along with the high level waste, and whatever techniques you want to go for a conditioning part, that conditioned product need to remain isolated from human environment for longer duration of time indeed, a time duration which may run in lakhs of years. which may not be so easily to convince the public at large. Maybe there is a merit in removing these long-lived radionuclides, provided again if we have ways and technology available. Thanks to our mentors, that the way they have guided us, that one has to put indigenous efforts to recover these radionuclides. They can be utilized for different applications. At the same time, more important is the footprints gets reduced dramatically for the waste which has to go for disposal in a geological disposal facility. So this is what I was trying, that if you look at the high level waste, almost a complete periodic table gets represented. Maybe some of the mentors who are from chemistry background, they can appreciate that we have alkali metals also in the waste, we have alkaline earth metals also, we have transition elements also in the waste, we have non-metals, and of course lanthanides and actinides I was just mentioning, they have their own presence, maybe cerium-144, neodymium-144, then neptunium, plutonium, curium, americium. So they are all in the waste. So waste as such, that means we need to have a good understanding of the chemistry if we are looking for the separation of this from the waste and to achieve that level of purity. Now, following the international practices, India also has gone for a conventional three-stage practice or three-stage policy for or philosophy for management of high-level radioactive liquid waste, which makes like the waste being stored into high integrity stainless steel containers underground, and then underground also it will be transferred to the waste immobilization plant. Maybe we have at Tarapur, Trombay, and Mumbai, and of course in Kalpakam also we have. So then the waste transferred in the plant then is taken for solidification, or you can say immobilization, and we go for what is called vitrification, which is a process where high-level radioactive liquid waste is immobilized into an inert glass matrix, and then this glass is poured. So the radionuclides, they are now chemically bonded with the glass forming chemicals, and then they achieve a good level of inertness to the extent that even if they are put into contact with boiling water, radionuclides are not getting leached out of it. And once the glass is drained, then it is being lid is put, it is being remotely welded, and then the second part will be because anyway all the radionuclides are there and they are in the continuous process of decay. That means the heat will be getting generated on account of decay of these radionuclides, these fission products. So we have to make sure that dissipation of heat is done. So we have what is called interim storage facility, which is now we have operational at Tarapur as well as Kalpakam. And these vitrified waste products, 3 such canisters, which we put them in another stainless steel envelope, and that again is welded, and then 3 such envelope we put in a cask, the well qualified cask, and then this cask is then taken to Tarapur from Mumbai, and they are being put in our interim storage facility. And we intend to put around 60 to 80 years or even more to ensure that heat is dissipated. Dissipation of heat, it has got an important role to play. One is the temperature in the center. The glass product will not rise more than the glass transition temperature, because if there is increase in temperature there will be a temperature induced devitrification as well. And more importantly, if the heat is efficiently dissipated, it also affects me for reducing the again footprints. I can make my geological disposal system very compact indeed. And the third stage, eventually it is a conceptual part of geological disposal facility. All our efforts in terms of development of science and technology need to be made to the extent that is it possible to reduce the requirement or the volume of the waste which need to go to this geological disposal facility, thereby enhancing, or you can say increasing the time scale required, or do we need? So those efforts are now being put, we'll be needing, but question is it possible to reduce the volume to such an extent that there will be hardly very small volume to left with, where we will go for geological disposal facility. The question is why glass people have been using internationally, and again natural analog. In fact, nature has taught us that glass is the one of the best way to include the to make as a waste emulsion part in even near Bombay, Thane. Like we have taken these samples. Vajraswari may be known to many of our people here. 70 kilometers we are gone, and if you look at the survey of Geological Survey of India, something around 60 million year before, 65 million before, there have been some natural events, maybe meteorite have fallen, or those glasses we have collected and again analyzed. We divide these glasses in two parts. One is called basaltic, one is called obsidian, and basaltic is coming closer to nuclear waste glasses. And these glasses, when we have seen, we have part that there has not been much change in the glasses with respect to their integrity part, although these glasses do not have radioactivity. So we have done extensive study of glasses to understand the radiation induced changes, and it has been results have very clearly internationally indicated that the glass is a fairly having good radiation stability as well. This is just an example of our two typical our facility of interim storage. There has been, even can say, improvisation at Kalpakkam as well with respect to increasing the surface area, or you can say draft airflow at our Kalpakkam, and now both are operational and presently much because our volumes are less, and they are now hardly some 15 to 20% areas occupied. And this is again some sort of our work with respect to preparing what can be the host matrix in case or at some point of time if you have to look for the geological our disposal facilities. We have been investigating clays as well as the granites formation in a tectonically stable zones, and a lot of efforts have been put right from last 30, 40, 50 years, and even temperature changes or temperature effects of rocks also have been studied in some of the times where we have exploited our empty gold mines from there to study. What I'm trying to tell that we have been keeping at pace with the world level development with respect to our geological disposal facilities development also. Now in the some of the recent advancement in the waste management, I would like to draw your attention. There has been improvement in the flow sheet of reprocessing. And now we wanted to, that the inactive chemicals, we don't want to add much, because the glass, when we say vitrification, the waste loading, that means how much amount of waste can go in per canister, that glass will not differentiate whether the chemical is radioactive or chemically active. So we need to make sure that we only vitrify the radionuclides, not the chemicals. So we have started improvising the reprocessing flow sheet and then going for a partitioning. This is really one of the game changer, if I can say, in management of high level waste. And when I say partitioning, I mean we have a two phase of partitioning. One, we wanted to, or we are now last 5 years partitioning the active component of the waste from inactive ones. Inactive ones, we have different ways and means to manage the inactive chemicals. So we separate the radioactive component from waste and then go for their indivisible ways of management. That means go for, if required, we can go for vitrification. But before that, if we are able to remove cesium-137 separately, strontium-90 separately, why not to exploit them for their deployment for societal benefits? And this also helps us to increase the waste loading. Look at internationally also, this is valid, not only in India. If you look at the waste scenario, the red color shows the added chemical fraction is very, very large compared to the active contribution is very small. Small ball shows, the red color part shows the concentration of active part is very, very small, and inactive part is this, very high. Now, if you want to go for vitrification as it is, that means we largely will be vitrifying inactive part. And when that time onwards, we started putting our development efforts, is it not possible to go for a reversal? Is it not possible to reduce the added chemicals? And this could be achieved by two. Number one, by improvising the flow sheet of recycling, and second, going for partitioning. The coming slides will indicate the benefit of partitioning. So look at, if we do not go for, this is a well-known curve. I'm very sure my all mentors must have seen for a long time. but it is seeing one. Now we are practicing. This is an important change. And of course, those have been done with the guiding of all our mentors who have been indicating that start putting efforts now. Soon we have to go for partitioning part. The consequences are very clear. If you do not go for any reprocessing, like we in case of open fuel cycle, the lakhs of year will be required to come the activity level equivalent to natural uranium ore. The red line, which is parallel to x-axis, indicates the activity of natural uranium, which has been existing into the environment, and human civilization also is existing. So this has been taken as a reference point. Now, if you go for a reprocessing, that means only uranium and plutonium, you have to still again go for maybe around 10,000 years or so till the activity comes to equivalent to uranium level. But now, if you remove the cesium and strontium part separately, and then their half-life, we know that around 30 years, go for 10 half-life or so, and the time scale gets reduced radically or dramatically. So this graph very clearly indicates the benefits or the driving force going for our partitioning part. The first part shows the results of untiring efforts put by, again, scientific community. Some of them are now our mentors in our actinide partitioning. This facility is located at Tarapur, and probably, if I'm not wrong, this is the first plant in the world in a commercial scale where the process has been well established for our partitioning of long-lived components. That's what actinides. And the second part is the facility at Trombay itself, which we have been now operating in last 5 to 6 years, and where we are recovering cesium-137. Let me tell you, lakhs of curies of cesium-137 have been recovered from high-level waste, and that the purified cesium glass we have put into a specially made glass. Again, it is a borosilicate glass, so that glass makes it impervious part, or that cesium pencil is used for as a blood irradiator part. And then similarly, we are recovering strontium also from high-level waste. We know that strontium and yttrium is in a secular equilibrium, so the recovered strontium helps to milk yttrium-90 at a periodic interval, and that yttrium-90 then it is being attached to a particular ligand, dotatate or other suitable ligands by our, makes it a very effective radiopharmaceutical, and this has been going regular, maybe weekly. The yttrium-90 is being given to RMC as well as TMC for its therapeutic applications after having all the clearances from RPC, that is radio pharmaceutical committees. They have a very stringent specifications. To give an example, that alpha activity contamination in yttrium-90 has to be less than, if I have 1 curie of yttrium-90, the alpha contamination has to be less than 1 nanocurie per 1 curie of yttrium. So these are the stringent level of specifications imposed by internationally as well as our AERB or BSc. And after achieving all those stringent specifications, now they are being in regular serving our these radionuclides to our societal benefits. And this could be possible by, again, a lot of efforts put right from our mentors onwards. They have been working and advocating our amide-based extractants because of their distant advantage. They are known as popularly CHON-based extractants. And we have, again, as the way we say, we have a very approach of development, demonstration, and deployment. I remember the way when we developed, we started going for a demonstration extensively, comprehensively, so that we check, verify, and validate the efficacy of their use in plant scale. And then we went for our regulators, and then we got the clearance. And now, last 5 years onwards, they are being in the plant scale using mixer settlers, these newly deployed extractants. And let me tell you, based on the feedback of the BIS now and Kalpakam also, we are going to use these extractants for recovering the useful radionuclides like cesium, strontium. So we have a rich source. Cesium-137 is being recovered, and this being used. Let me tell you, the activity of cesium-137 in the glass, it goes right from maybe 2 curie per gram to as high as 5.5 to 6 curie per gram, being it's used as a even food grain irradiated nowadays, also being used in BRC, apart from blood irradiation source. And then strontium 90 I told, ruthenium out I will tell. I'm sure it must be aware that this blood irradiation is a very important part. This is called for, it's very important for our transfusion associated graft versus host disease. And this is a typical example when the first consignment of cesium-137 was given. But now, as on date, more than 250 rather glass pencils has been given, and then conversion of glass into cesium into glass pencil makes it more secure and safe, because it is not it is a immobilized cesium. Otherwise, cesium efforts of recovery has been there as well in the world also, but probably they have gone as a cesium chloride, which is a water soluble salt. So conversion into as a cesium as a glass pencil, which is non-dispersible form, probably again I say we are the first country in the world to have that high level where lakhs of curies of cesium-137 has been put into glass pencil, having its non-dispersible nature, making it secure and safe for using at our hospitals within the country. Let me tell you now, more than 20 hospitals in the country are using these pencils for its blood irradiation purposes. Recent one of the examples is ruthenium-106. Maybe just as a refreshment for my mentors, the ruthenium-106 decays to what is called rhodium-106. It has a half-life of around maybe 1 year or so, 368 days or 371 days. And this rhodium in particular gets decayed to palladium-106. And the total beta energy is a pure beta from rhodium to palladium, and 3.54 MeV beta, which makes this as one of the unique radionuclide for eye cancer treatment, because the advantages are very clearly indicated at the bottom part of my slide. It's a very selective close to the tumor, minimal dose to the surrounding structure, because we don't want the healthy tissues to get adversely affected by the radiation energy. So beta being low range, it will have more to the close to the tumor itself, and then it will eventually help us to minimize the radiation induced complications. The right hand side curve shows that because iodine also 125 has been used, but ruthenium has an important application depending on the tumor size. This particular curve shows that if you have something tumor size of the order of 5 to 6 mm, probably ruthenium-106 is one of the best radionuclides. And let me tell you here, sir, ruthenium-106 with deposition part, the radionuclides or this particular source is only one company in the world, Messrs. Vivek in Germany. They have been giving to a different part of the world. India also, our leading hospitals, including AIIMS, Sankar Nethralaya, they were all importing it from, on the one plaque was costing some order of maybe 13 to 14 lakhs for our eye cancer treatment. That means the treatment was not within the striking distance of our general public at large. Now, this particular notable contribution from BARC has really made a sea change in the treatment of this particular type of cancers, where the ruthenium-106 could be recovered and electrodeposited on silver plaque, and these silver plaques, and then we handed over maybe some 2 years before, something in July 2019, the first consignment, and we gave it to different hospitals, including AIIMS Delhi, Sankar Nethralaya, and then they have used these plaques and found their experiences wonderfully well. They are mentioning that it is behaving at par or even better than what is being imported earlier. And the examples are like, this has been from Shankar Eye Hospitals. This eye picture indicates that the eye picture before, we really we appreciate and acknowledge their contribution, and we have taken their permission to show these slides here. And this is the eye before the treatment was going, and after treatment, look at the patients are doing very well as per the doctor's part. And look at a very recent in 2021 only, maybe somewhere April or May, army hospitals in Delhi, they have also procured our plaques, which after all the clearances from our ARB we have given to army hospitals, and they could salvage the vision of a child using the plates which was given by BRC or Ruthenium 106. This is again some sort of a certificate, I can call it. These are again the you can say performance evaluation by AIMS, and they are very clearly indicating AIMS that they are finding these plates at par with internationally developed product. And this again has been one of the package. This simulator which has been programmed by NRG along the plate. This helps the beginners or the practitioners or doctors or oncologists to decide the optimal dose depending on the tumor size, depending on the radiation strength and all. So this also becomes along with the ruthenium plaque, this also we give. And let me tell you, sir, now we are getting requirements from some of the developing countries also, and BRIT has been a common window to know, as we know all, that this particular technology, this particular part has been given to BRIT, and BRIT is getting now inquiries from some of the member countries, other developing countries also to give. So now we are opening the door for export of this. This is an important contribution as Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India concept as well. Now, similar, I was thinking that Yttrium-90, which I was explaining, that Yttrium-90 has been also in use, recovery we have been giving. Now look at something, an important part, maybe another 10 minutes I will take. This, if you take basis as a 1 gigawatt year electric. I repeat, 1 gigawatt electric, this I have taken as a reference part. And if I go for a what is called direct vitrification, the way we were going earlier, then I will land with something like 7,500 kgs of vitrified waste product, in which will have 19 number of canisters. If I go for partitioning of active components, the way I was telling, only active component can be separated. And if I assume that, okay, I don't need cesium, I don't need strontium, I have to vitrify every radionuclide, then we will be ending up with 3,400 kgs of vitrified waste product, which will have 9 number of canisters. This includes all our long-lived components also. Now, if we go for partitioning, see, in between I have written by 2025 in the second part itself. See, already this partitioning has been established. We are practicing from last 5 years in Tombay. The same thing is being put at now Kalpakam. So here we are indicating that by 2025, this will become one of the essential pre-treatment step at all our waste management plants in India. And at that time, our volume will reduce to 3,400. And the partitioning, although we have demonstrated, but still we have to improvise that part. And we are now going for it to the next level of maturity. And I'm very sure by 2030, this will also become an essential component as a prerequisite step to be there as an actinide partitioning prior to vitrification. And that time we'll have only 530 kgs of vitrified waste product, amounting to only 2 canisters. Presently, I am not looking for transportation. I do look, and I am ambitious for going for what is called ADS related systems, and at BARC or at our DAE, we have been putting a lot of efforts, and still, but I say still it will take some more time to get it realized into right part. And if it will happen, maybe we are a little far away. So presently I'm not taking any credit of this, but if it comes again, only will have 160 kgs. That means hardly less than a canister or so. Because 160 kg, you divide by the density of glass, which is around 2.5, it will be less than a canister. So if you look at this part of thing, clearly indicates the footprints, effect of footprints, which will have the impact on footprints the partition can have, which can really change the scenario of having our geological disposal systems in India. Now look at a typical part. If I decide X as a size of repository, and if I adopt of minor actinide partitioning by 2030, then for one repository of a size X, I will need beyond 2240. And if I go for a inactive, and that means I remove only inactive part and don't go for active and partitioning, I will be needing something around a repository of 5 times the size of X by 2102. And if I go for a direct vitrification, even by 2083, I will be going more than 10 times of the size of X type of size of the repository. The X I have not defined, I have not mentioned here intentionally. And but because the idea was to give a reflection, give a picture that what is the extent of impact of this partitioning on the footprints of a geological disposal system. Innovations in waste management has led to recovery of valuable radionuclides for societal benefits, realizing wealth from waste, thereby changing the color of thought pattern of public at large. In order to delay the repository, in fact, when we need the repository question comes, so that we are working on, because presently we say that we have established and all, but so far we have a good, you can say, maturity level with respect to PSWR part. We are working on when we come to the waste coming from a fast reactors, because there will be a different set of challenges. We are aware of it and we are working on it. I'm very sure the partitioning part again we will have for the fast reactor as well. But presently we are working on it. Present experience what we have is on our PSWR waste reactors. And then of course efforts are there as part of ADS or as well as for fast reactor. In fact, that way India is in a unique condition, unique position there. See, fast reactors we are not having only for burning of our actinides, or you can say as a homogeneous fuel or at a heterogeneous fuel. Rather, it is an important component of a second stage. So that way India is in a unique position. We will exploit those opportunities also. I'm sure work is going on there as well. How best these minor actinides also can be taken into our fast reactor, where the reality is not far away. Fast reactor is going to come, and there also will be trying to see the extent of burning of these parts in fast reactor. And of course, transportation in ADS, we have an ambitious program and the work is going on. And that presently, I'm not taking any account of this presently to start with, but yes, transportation is an important part for this. How we could achieve all this success? See, there have been what is called a system engineering. So it is indeed it's an interdisciplinary field of engineering and engineering management. How to design, integrate, and manage the complex system over their life cycles. It deals with the, like one cycle is application of domain expertise. You take example of a partitioning part. We need an expertise domain, which includes our development of in-house extractants. We need to see how it is possible in the whether it will work, it will achieve that level of selectivity. The extractant will have required irradiation stability also or not. And then it goes to the engineering level, which includes optimization of parameters. Like whether we have to use which engineering equipment I have to use. So that way we have been working, and thanks to this particular integration of this part, where the stakeholders becomes our regulators also. So really this type of a concept also helps a lot in our achieving the successes in our complex systems. So reprocessing and waste management, if you look at we have a near surface disposal facility. Now we will have what is called improvised near surface disposal sites, because we'll be putting cesium, strontium rich waste there, and there with our conventional NSDF may not be the best suitable. So we are also now started studying what is called improvised near surface disposal facility. And then of course geological disposal facility is far away, because our volume will get reduced immensely if we have a religious adherence of the program, even by 2030 of partitioning part. Now I'm just giving some of the slides which includes our how we have gone ahead with the advancement right from our metallic melter to our cold crucible. And recently we know that joule heated silicon melter is being used at Tarapur and Kalpakam. We are aware about the challenges, and now cold crucible has been you can say all commercial operation has been done at Trombay in presence of our Tarapur staff, and soon 1 unit of cold crucible is being transported to Tarapur, and they'll be, to start with, they'll be going ahead to go for vitrification of intermediate waste to get a hands-on experience prior to it gets matured for high-level vitrification. Challenges we have been now covering with respect to evaporators also. We know that these evaporators are integral part of our recycling as well as waste management part, and we have been working again in how to, because they have their limited usable life. We have been working ahead with respect to extending the usable life, which includes the improvisation in the material QA, as well as even new materials which are based on zircon or even titanium based to replace with the present part, so that usable life of these operators can be improved. Now, one of the important aspects is our remote handling gadgets. They play a very important role, because if I call about as a glass pencil, it's a very precise. To give an example to you, sir, the height is around 20 centimeters. The dia of this pencil is around 2.5 centimeters. We had to weld, we had to qualify that weld, we had to have a very precise work, and the radiation level of single pencil goes as high as around 10,000 R. So that needless to mention that they need to be there in a hot cell, and hot cell we have to bank on our customized remote handling gadgets, which we call as a servo manipulators, like very important for our precise work. But now we are also going for a bulk requirement or for a bulk application. We are now going for a power manipulator as well. And these two really help a lot to maneuver our operations inside the hot cell, which includes even welding of a cesium small pencil to meet our regulatory clearances. Similarly, all our hot cell is like a football ground, maybe 40 meters is the length and around 12 meters the width. And our window, which includes our radiation shielding window, cannot allow us to have a look at all the part. So we have put cameras at different locations within the hot cell. And needless to mention that these cameras, conventional cameras, they get severe radiation damage, and they need to be replaced on a very frequent part because of high radiation, and every removal was at the cost of downtime of the plant as well as many high maintenance consumption. So we have again improvements have done. We have started working on, or rather now it is being used on what is called periscopic based cameras, where cameras are in the cell and there are the prisms, glass prisms, which do not have that level of radiation damage, and we have put in the in-cell crane, and it has been really very helpful in enhancing the usable life. And even we have been working also for what is called radiation hardened materials, electronic systems based on, because CCD parts, they have a, radiation damage is quite frequent. So here also we have made a very important contributions, or you can say improvements, which has really, now we are encashing the benefit in terms of usable life of this. Coming to the low level part, near zero discharge has been one of the motives, and we have gone one step ahead. Waste to water. In this year, we have now aimed that 50-meter cube of waste, whatever activity, because after almost having BDL type, that waste, that water, I'm not now calling it a waste, that water will be recycled back for use. So waste to water approach. And earlier we have been working on what is called chemical treatment, but it has got its own limitation. Now we are working on a hybrid process, which comprises of what is called reverse osmosis, which is called of a selective absorbents, and then of course our conventional chemical treatment. So a hybrid process really helps to get the activity below, sometimes below detection limits, resulting into achieving not only near zero, rather waste to water approach as well. Now, coming to solid waste, in recent part, conventionally, we have been earlier compacting and all, but last 3-4 years, we have gone for what is called plasma assisted incineration for all type of, particularly our polymeric and cellulosic waste, which constitutes a good amount of the solid waste annually getting generated. And this plasma makes the waste into a very, very small ash. That means volume reduction factor becomes very high. And I'm very sure my worthy mentors are aware that when we go for a conventional incineration of polymeric paste and all, toxic gas like dioxin and furans they definitely come out and they come to the environment. But in plasma, where we are able to achieve high temperature, and this dioxin, for instance, are not coming, they're getting destroyed there. So now this has been in use at Trombay, and presently, based on the encouraging part of this, it is being implemented at Tarapur and Kalpakam also. Now, these are the typical examples of our engineered modules. Here also we have made a can say advancement. Now we are now working, or we are using now what is called MRDM, that is multi-tier RCC disposal modules. Idea is very clear. Every square inch of place of near surface disposal need to be utilized judiciously. So it has been an important step in that direction. And now presently this particular concept is under regulatory clearance. And not only it will be useful at Trombay, Tarapur and Kalpakam, rather at all our NPCL sites also it will be utilized, because it will help us to have cost effective as well as optimization of our land. Offshoot applications. Now you look at the plasma parts, plasma incineration. Now, if you look at the example of our municipal solid waste, I am very sure all of us are aware the not a good condition of our municipal solid waste management in the country. Presently, maybe open pits and all is being practiced, or sometimes we go for open incineration, and all of us are aware with respect to consequences of open incinerations. Maybe this plasma assisted incineration can go a long way to help with this. Internationally, it has been adopted, and based on the increasing part of what is small, around 50 kg per hour capacity at Trombay, now we have gone for a model plant at Tarapur for even trying for a municipal solid waste incineration. Presently, we have been working with our both DIE units, BRC as well as IPR Ahmedabad. Put together, the plasma torches are being put now. The concept is being now in the DPR, or the documents are at now our regulatory process, and we are now going ahead with the 50 kg per hour, a model plant for our municipal solid waste, because we know that municipal solid waste are having calorific values. Again, a simple examples, the condition what we are having, all of our municipal solid waste, probably the plasma can help. Of course, we had to make economical part, we had to make cost effective, but presently a science and the technology need to develop. See, we are all aware, initially our mobile was costing 15,000 or 20,000. Today we now even 2,000 also. So the cost effective part, presently we look later. Presently I'm trying about the going for the technology, and with respect to our this BRC also is working at Tarapur to work and trying to utilize even the calorific value of municipal solid waste to get it can be utilized. You know, there is a plant near Pune. In fact, I had an opportunity to look at it. The heat coming from the calorific value of this municipal solid waste is being utilized to use our evaporator, that the water converts into steam, and that steam is evaporating their chemical hazardous waste. So that calorific value can be utilized for its meaningful purposes. Of course, we have to mature to that level. Presently, we have started to make a model plant. Similarly, our industrial effluents. See, when I'm going for a waste to water approach, is it not possible to even attempt at the industrial effluents for going for some sort of a similar type of a hybrid process, where industrial effluents also can be attempted to these are all the offshoot applications which we have matured in the nuclear applications. They have an opportunity to be explored for even going for our industrial effluents cleaning as well. So recently, sir, in the COVID part, all of us are aware that glass fiber media, I repeat, glass fiber media is being used in all our nuclear installations from almost 5 decades. And I'm very sure many of us are aware these glass fiber medias are imported. Maybe Ledel is one company in France, they are all imported. Now we have made an attempt to go for indigenously development of this. We have now prepared, or can say made one vendor. Now that the vendor is now in the advanced stage of I can say evaluation, and very soon in a couple of months we'll have HEPA filters made from indigenous fiber media rather than banking on our imported materials. Again, this presently we have done some customization to make their use as in the form of mask. which is having very high retention. That is well known, but more importantly, is our breathing resistance and other properties. So we made some changes in the glass fiber media and gave into the our mask in the challenging time of COVID, and probably the first mask, you can say high quality respiratory mask. It's called engineered valveless transparent mask, maybe first in the country, where it's a reusable. It's a very cost effective. Reusable means it's a modular construction. You can remove the first part and then wash, and all those materials which we have used here all are cleared by FDA. That means they're all cleared for our use, and they have been now cleared. Technology has been given to one of the manufacturer at Pune. Very soon, in days, it will be available in Amazon as well. So these efforts have been again appreciated by all our bosses at higher levels, because in the time of COVID and all, we could utilize the indigenous technology, and now these filters are indigenously developed. Maybe coming some slides how we are being viewed with respect to these developments. Some of the international scientific community, they are appreciating the efforts. Of course, we have our own road to go ahead, but nevertheless, they have been our efforts are being seen internationally as well. Like our chairman USRC visited, and again he also saw the uniqueness of removal of cesium and converted non-dispersible form. That is important, because removal efforts have been done earlier as well. But that was in the form of chloride, which is a water soluble part, which is very dispersible in nature, very soluble. So this is a non-dispersible, is a uniqueness. Again, CA France has been very appreciating the efforts, where it feels that cesium-137, now it adds to ruthenium-106 as well. And then even the political part also of Japan has been appreciating the efforts. I come to an answer, coming to conclusion part of it. We have 5 decades of experience in our nuclear closed fuel cycle, and experience is at par, the best with the international practices. Reprocessing is the key of going ahead for our nuclear program, because of our resources of utilization, and we strongly believe and rather demonstrated that it will have a dramatic effect on the waste volumes, which eventually going. We know that waste management is an evolving process. We have been learning, and we have made a change in having the emphasis on waste volume minimization. Is it not possible to now almost we have established the recovery of radionuclides, and they're all in public domain in different applications, with eye cancer, with therapeutic, or with food irrigation, blood irradiation. So now, without any doubt, we strongly say that waste is no longer a waste, rather is a resource material. Our innovations in the backend size has gone a long way to reduce the footprints of geological disposal systems. Excellence in chemical science and technology, maturity attained in the nuclear waste management has put our country in the driver's seat globally. This expertise contributes toward improvisation of, even it can have an offshoot applications in some of the challenging problems being faced by society. And we are also trying to set record of respect to safety is a result of adoption of safe practices with continuous, exhaustive, and independent regulatory review. Thank you for attention, sir. This particular slide is of course quite old, and we have been indicating, again emphasizing, look at the size of our very small ring, which includes the volume of the waste after partitioning, of course. And that is the waste where one Indian family will be having its use of exploiting all the electricity requirements from nuclear technology throughout their life. And that is the only very small volume of waste which will be left with. This indicates one of the importance of the partitioning as well as our closed fuel cycle. We have gone through a challenging time, sir, with folded hand. I really pray Almighty with the well-known mantras. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashantu, Ma Kashid Dukbhag Bhavet. May all of us, may my mentors, I keep on having lucky enough to have their blessings for a long time to come. May all be prosperous and happy. May all be free from all illness. May all see what is auspicious. May no one suffer. So with that sincere prayer from Almighty, I come to an end. Jai Hind. And now I look forward the blessings and some of the questions from my mentors as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kaushik, for that really spellbinding presentation. I mean, you really covered the entire gamut of activities, also given us a really bird's eye view of the process. The session is now open. Ramarao, will you continue? Go ahead. I've already seen a question, a hand raised by Sri Kailash Agarwal, former Director NRG, Kaushik, ex-mentor, if I can say so. And Ramarao, can I go ahead and ask Mr. ask the question?
Shall I ask the question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Kailash.
Yeah, Dr. Kaushik, a very excellent presentation covering total gamut of the backend. Thank you for this presentation. My question and one comment is, first comment is that your slide on this fission products usage on cesium, strontium is very much used internationally in IAEA. So congratulations for that. And none of the countries worldwide have been using this for societal purpose. My question is now, whether now you have been doing this on R&D scale in BARC at low burn-up, whether you face any problem in high burn-up fuel like PHWR or LWR, why this could not be done online for our Tarapur processing or Kalpakkam? This is one question. Second question is about use of minor actinide with the fuel. Is there, because they will be finally required to be burned in fast reactor. Is there any research or development going on in BRC for the fabrication, transportation, fabrication of minor actinide along with the material, fuel material? These are the two questions. Thank you.
Sir. Sir, thanks a lot for your appreciation of the works being done at NRG. Of course, many of the works started under your dynamic guidance and leadership. To respond to the question, sir, recently, as you told rightly, that we have been now practicing this last 5 years with respect to the research reactors, where burn-up is around 1,500 megawatt day per ton. But last 1 year, sir, we have been to Kalpakkam, where commercial our PHWR reactors having burn up of around 8,000 to even 10,000 megawatt day per ton. That waste has been characterized. Those radioactive streams have been, you can say, scrutinized for this partitioning process. And again, there all our extractants, they have worked with the same efficacy. Starting from HLW, we are ending up with LLW there also. Based on this, now that Kalpakkam plant is going for a refurbishment involving their mixer settler there, and within a year time, they will go for warming up and hot operations as well there. And second, to respond, sir, very rightly you have pointed out that, and I also touched upon that we are in a unique position in India, that we have a fast reactor, not because of only burning of this part, rather as an important component of our second nuclear fuel cycle. There, sir, we have an ambitious program of this recovered part, because we have to remove the lanthanides and actinides from each other, for which we have now going quite ahead, and results are very encouraging. That my mentors who are from chemistry background, they can appreciate that, because of the similar chemistry of lanthanide and actinides. Now, sir, we have one the better in the sense there have been some processes which are able to give me the required purity with respect to removal of lanthanides, and those parts then later on can be taken to our fast reactor, either as a as a homogeneous fuel or as a heterogeneous fuel. Both options are now being examined by our nuclear fuel group of BRC. Probably, I think I could respond to the question.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your blessings and.
Yeah, Mr. Here, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir. Please.
Well, I am quite interested in the non-electrical applications of the nuclear energy. Can we buy your book, which you have just written by Amazon?
Sir, book Amazon, sir. Book is available. Even we will be. I think as Dr. Manchanda sir was also indicating that the main authors have been our Director BRC, Dr. Mohanty sir, and Tyagi sir, and books will be available absolutely for our reference. That includes, as very rightly you are told, enormous scope for non-nuclear applications.
Yes, sir. I am keenly interested. I was in IAEA working in this area only.
Certainly, sir. It will be our pleasure, sir. Sir, rather, it will be my privilege. One book, I will see that we will deliver at your residence. It will be our pleasure. Rather, it will be our. It will be our pleasure.
Second thing is, till thermochemical splitting of hydrogen is available, is there a plan in BRC for high temperature electrolysis?
For hydrogen
going on in BRC?
Yes,
and
yes.
high temperature electrolysis producing hydrogen.
So it is being examined. It's being studied. So one.
And what is its economics with the conventional hydrogen product?
Yeah, that's what, sir. Abhi, that's what I'm trying to indicate. Presently, we are not ruling out any options with respect to hydrogen generations and economics. See, what maybe I may be wrong, but I feel let us first mature the technology, and that economics later on can be seen in the sense. I have or all of us have an example of a typical our mobile. Some 10 years before, this mobile was not in the reach of only a handful of people. So technology, once we improvise, presently we are looking for we are looking for chemical based also, high temperature based also, and then probably yet we have not come to a stage where we can really compare the economics as on date.
Finally, I wanted to meet you. It is very difficult to visit it with BRC. Where can we meet?
Sir, I will come at, if you permit me, I will come at your residence itself along with the book.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
I will have a blessing of having a cup of tea with you. That is a really
okay, sir. All memory
dream coming true. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? I don't see any raised hands. Any other questions?
Ramamurthy ji, can I ask a small question?
Yes, sir. Yes, please, sir.
Kaushik ji, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very much, sir.
You had very, very nicely summarized the work, when you have, in fact, I was very happy that you have split it in 2 stages from the present vitrification plan to that active separation and then minor active separation. You have split it in 2 parts. You have gone, if I remember correctly, your slide shows 7,500 kg to 3,500 to 500, if I understand correctly. So obviously, this must be referring to the intermediate stage where lanthanides are a part of americium and curium. And I think the last one you must be referring only to americium curium. Am I right?
Yes, sir. See, the last part which I am referring is only the long-lived part. Even not the last part is not including lanthanides also.
Yeah,
last
that's
part,
what I'm telling.
Yeah. Yes, you are right.
Yeah, only americium and curium.
Yes, yes. In fact, yes, you are right. But let me tell you, actinides, they have their own set of applications also, which presently I am not making a mention of.
Yeah, that's fine. My second small question is, there was a 10-year back, or rather I will say 10 to 20-year back, lot of talk was there on Synrock. Is there, what is the present status, whether in India or international? Synrock.
Sir, right. Sir, this Synrock has been an important matrices for future, because if you look at the thermodynamic point consideration, our vitrification is a thermodynamically a metastable state. And on the other hand, synrock being crystalline is a more stable state. But it so happened that the synrock preparation part, it needs high temperature and high pressure of the order of 50 megapascals or so, and temperature of the order of maybe around 1500 plus. So it has been well studied. In fact, it started from Australia, and being worked at different part of the country. In India also we have been, but to the best of my knowledge, probably still far away to see the light of the day. When I say light of the day, I mean to be deployed on the plant scale. We are far away from this.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
May I ask a small question, please?
Sir, it was my pleasure.
Regarding the recovery of your minor actinides, you have mentioned that up to americium or curium you have reached. So up to how many
Sarkar, unmute. Who's asking?
Garg.
That's okay, sir. Please go ahead.
So I just wanted to know that how many curies of americium can be or has been separated so far?
Yeah, to respond to your question, sir, let me tell you, that's what I was trying to tell. The technology which I was referring has been matured on commercial scale, not on the laboratory scale.
Okay.
Probably this suffice your response.
But then can you prepare americium beryllium neutron sources, which I think would be an ideal thing for the university students? They could use some smaller radioactivities there itself to study the half-life and other experiments.
Certainly, sir, it is within the striking distance of our now having the technology of separation. It is within the striking distance.
Okay. Then further to that, have you been to Californium by any chance?
Not, sir, not.
Not yet. Okay. Thank you very much.
Really running out of time, but Mr. Sarkar has raised his hand. Sir, please briefly, please.
Kaushik sir, if I am audible, I have two questions.
Yes, sir.
Apart from this cesium, strontium, ruthenium, and technetium, any other isotopes our WIP is looking for societal benefit? And second is, what about the fission moly project that is been taken care of in BRC?
Yeah, sir, presently from waste, see, waste is a host of good radionuclides, and we targeted cesium and strontium to start with because the bulk of the radioactivity, maybe more than 90% or so, if I look at the waste coming from a typical PSWR with a cooling time of maybe around 5 years or so, we 90% of activity is coming from cesium, strontium, so we attacked there. And then ruthenium came because of its eye cancer part. We are also now trying to aim at even cerium-144. Cerium-144 also is one of the important radiopharmaceuticals being talked about by our radiopharmacists, and we will be attempting the next part of even cerium-144 also. Coming to the fission moly part, we have the facility for again fission molybdenum, like that facility is now being put, and which will meet the requirement of our country.
So, shall we end this discussion? Raman, are you online? Raman.
Sir, my email ID is I think I mentioned there, and CPK. Because all these are not the question, these are all the blessings from my mentors. It will be really my pleasure, because I will be learning from there some of the areas which need to be touched upon. So my earnest request is anything part, because they will give me the future directions in which we have to move further. Certainly any queries and all can be emailed to me. It will be my pleasure to respond to it.
Yeah, we'll do that. I think Dharne will take over.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. Right at the outset, I think it is a bit too late, so I will not consume much of the time. I'll just summarize what we have gone through. As first of all, the best word which I liked was not the back end, but the backbone of the Indian nuclear power program. And that was one of the very aptly describing the total process of recycling and waste management. It also, the talk by Dr. Kaushik was so enthusiastic and forceful that it brought to the life the concept of waste to wealth, as well as the concept of waste to water. And in a very perfectly worded and perfectly picturized slides, it has been delivered. The lot of concept about waste, because people try to put the waste equivalent to some thermal plants, that whatever comes out of the plant is all waste, where we are not looking at it at that way. And we are looking at it as the spent fuel. And that is not a waste for us, that is a resource. And from that, we are generating the wealth. The concept was very well explained by Dr. Kaushik. And the importance of nuclear energy in the face of COP26, which is going on in Glasgow, and mention of Honorable Prime Minister, as well as the ANS and IAEA was quite apt. In fact, let us be very clear that the nuclear is not a competitor to solar or wind or the renewable energies. Today, the condition is such that we need all these energies which will stop the climate change and reduce the carbon footprint. So many times there is a mindset that nuclear is a competitor of solar or wind. No, that's not the case. We need both, and both in abundant quantity. The footprint of carbon is reducing, but we can see that in last few years, the footprint of nuclear has also reduced from about 4% to 2%, and which we need to look into. And as we are talking about climate goals and the reduction of the footprint by 2070, we will need to consider nuclear in a very serious way. Now, Dr. Kaushik gave us a complete picture of reprocessing and the processes in the reprocessing, the automation which is required, what was used in the last generation, what is being used currently, and what will be used in the next generation of recycling plants and the waste management. He also talked about the challenges and how to complete the cycle. What are the various ways? He very pictorially told us about what will be the generation with current technology of the vitrified waste. Of course, vitrification is on very solid grounds, being is the doctoral subject. So he told us very nicely about vitrification, how much generation it will be in how many canisters, and then if we go for partitioning, how much it will be, and if we go for transmutation, how much it will be, giving us a complete picture of what are the processes involved, in which direction we are moving, and what we are going to achieve at the end of whatever our goals are there. So he had told us about the final disposals and in the methods of near surface facilities, intermediate facilities, as well as the deep geological repositories. He talked about the innovations, he talked about the novel extraction ways, and gave us the glimpse of what is going to be in the future and how we are going to benefit it out. He also talked at the length about the use of various products which are coming out of reprocessing and recycling for the societal benefits, which are very crucial at this stage. So the overall, if you look at it, the talk was a very well delivered, very enthusiastic talk, giving the nitty-gritties of very complex subject in a very simple manner, understandable. Well, we are probably nuclear people, but there are not many non-nuclear people in our audience. So for them, it was a very well covered talk, which could explain them a complex subject of nuclear reprocessing. So I would really be saying that it was a fantastic lecture and a question answer session after that, and the humbleness of Dr. Kaushik with the mentors and towards the audience. I mean, it was really fantastic. And hats off to you, sir. It was a really great lecture. Thank you so much. Over to you, Raman.
Yeah, now as we come to the end, it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Vijay Manchanda to deliver the vote of thanks.
It is my pleasant duty to express the vote of thanks to all those who have contributed to the success of this wonderful webinar. Of course, I will start with the speaker who readily agreed to give this webinar for the INS members. One thing I was noticing that we started, when the talk started, we were around 100. And Kaushik ji, you may not have noticed, even till 5 minutes before the lecture ended, still we had 95, 96 people. That shows, that how you were able to capture the audience. So thank you very much. I, of course, have known Kaushik ji for many, many years, right from the mid-80s, since he joined. So not only he has become a very competent, scientist, I think he's a very competent leader actually. I think he has the capacity to listen, he is a very open mind, and all new ideas he is ready to integrate in his system. So thank you once again, Kaushik ji. I also need to thank our own INS webinar committee led by Dr. Ramarao, Ramnamurthy ji, Dharne ji, and Malhotra ji. There are, of course, some people who have worked behind the scene. I'm told that gentleman Shimjit Rajgopal, he prepared the poster, and Mittal ji, our treasurer, he has the responsibility of sending this poster to all the members. So they all did their job very excellently. And of course, most important thing is the participant. So participants, it is an equation between the speaker and the participant. So it worked very well. And so am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was a
I think we lost the connection. There is a break.
I think he has muted it.
Yes, sir.
hello. So I thank once again the participant for the participation, and I will request all the participants, so kindly take part in all the INS webinars. INS has many activities we cover in the INS newsletter. So please follow all the INS activities and actively participate. And before we close down, I would like to make the announcement for the next webinar. Our next webinar is going to be addressed by Padma Vibhushan, Professor Raghunathan. He is the head of National Center for Mathematics at IIT Bombay. And he has worked for several decades at Tata Institute as a senior professor. And the title of his talk is going to be Mathematics, Art That Would Be Rather Science. This webinar will be on 27th of November 2021. It is again a Saturday at 5 p.m. So I request all the INS members to please join for this. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Manchanda ji. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ramnamurthy. Thank you, Dharne. And thank you, Dr. Kaushik. I had a wonderful lecture by you. And it was a pleasure speaking to you. And the way you reacted to my request was very humbling. And all our audience enjoyed your talk. Particularly Dr. Mehta, And I think, I don't know whether Dr. Grover was there, but Dr. Grover was very keen that you should be given an opportunity to give a talk in webinar. So I think that has fulfilled our mission in covering the waste management and fuel, back-end fuel cycle in webinar. Thank you, Dr. Kaushik.
Thank you, sir. It has been a reflection of all your affection, and I dedicated this, whatever little I know in the area, to all the mentors who have taught me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Raman, we are leaving.
Okay, we end the webinar. Looking forward to meeting you all again next time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.